It's time for episode 29 of the Mystical Times blog podcast with me, Michelle Eve. This episode is called The Witches and Wizards of Winchcombe, and the experiences I will share with you come from the book Weird and Wicked in Winchcombe by Anne Crow, which can be purchased from the Winchcombe Museum. I've added links to the show notes. Winchcombe is a pretty Cotswolds town in Gloucestershire and has a rich history. It has connections to Anglo-Saxon royalty, the rise and fall of the wool trade, and the dissolution of the abbey, all paint a picture of a town that has seen both prosperity and hardship. Today it's a charming destination with a strong sense of heritage. This Cotswolds town is steeped in stories of magic and mystery. Hundreds of years ago, Winchcombe was home to witches and wizards, cunning folk who were called upon for healing, protection and magic. Blizard the Wizard. Bevel Blizard was born around 1742 and was known to have been a necromancer and partook in magical ceremonies. He was revered by his workmates and seen as an oddity by some of the townspeople. It was said that Blizard possessed supernatural powers that were given to him by the Evil One. He studied magic and read the Bible backwards in the home where he lived on his own. He was approached by those who were in need due to their personal circumstances and also used his supernatural gifts for his own situations. He was working in a field with several workmates. They were cutting hay using scythes when all of a sudden Blizard announced that his hen roost was being robbed, so went to attend to it. As he left, his fellow workmates saw the scythe that Blizard had been using was still cutting the hay down by itself. Another worker approached Blizard to tell him that his own scythe had been stolen. Blizard reassured the man and told him that the thief, a Mr. Martin, who took the scythe, would never mow again. Blizard then gave the man a spare scythe from his barn and sharpened it with a halfpenny, and it was reported that the scythe cut better than any other scythe the man had used. It did indeed come true about the thief. Mr. Martin never did mow again, so whether that was down to Blizard and his supernatural powers, or Mr. Martin's rheumatism, we will never know. Another local man, Job Washbourne, fully believed in Blizard's magical ways, but on one occasion, whilst visiting Blizard's home for a game of cards, he had to walk out. Blizard invited Washbourne in, and after some small talk, Blizard went and placed 9 candles on the card table. It was getting dark, so the men needed the candlelight so they could start a game of cards. The candles then lit up with flames, rising high up, then down, as though the flames were dancing. Then 7 of the candles went out, and as this happened, a pack of cards appeared out of nowhere onto the table. This was too much for Washbourne, so he sharply left. It was on the 24th of January in 1836 that Bevel Blizard passed away at the grand old age of 94. He was buried in the churchyard at Oxenton, but those who lived by said Blizard's spirit was restless, and many saw his full form at the church gate. He was last seen by a local and trusted resident, Anne Tustin. The Shapeshifting Witch. In one of the Broadwater cottages lived Addie Webb, who locals called a witch. Many thought Webb had a power over wild animals, and even possibly that she shape-shifted as these creatures. It was in November in 1892 that a local newspaper reported that a group of men, including Frederick Simmons, who spoke to the newspaper, were out hunting badgers when something strange happened. The party consisted of 4 beaters and old hewings. They also took Toby, a dog who had great skills in hunting down badgers. They all went to Pinnock Woods for the hunt. A badger was caught, but it was said to have been possessed of a miraculous power, as the badger was able to bound away from Toby the dog. As the badger did this, it let out 3 of the most horrendous, unearthly yells. The group of men felt terrified by these sounds, and Toby just dropped to the ground and slunk back in fear to his owner's side. The group decided to cut their activity short, but as they made their way back home, old Hewins and the beaters were convinced the badger was somehow possessed and that the woods were haunted. Old Hewins went on to talk about Webb the Witch, or Old Adie as she was also known. They had passed the ruins of the cottage where she had lived. It was then that old Hewins told the story of how another group of men were out hunting hares with their hunting dogs. The dogs caught a sight of a hare and chased it, snapping at the hare's limbs. As the dogs came closer to catching the hare, they were right by Addie's cottage, as though the hare knew where to go. The hare was then seen to jump at the open window and went through it, and the dogs followed. The men then looked into the window. They saw that Addie was there, hunched over a fire, with blood coming from her limbs. The men, disturbed by what they had seen, quickly left the cottage. Old Hewings went on to talk further about old Addie's magical powers. He said that a man, carrying out hayfield duties in a field next to old Addie's cottage, had been asked by the witch for a drink. He had refused her in a very rude way, so when it came time for loading up the hay, it kept slipping off faster than they could put it onto the trailer. The boss heard of this happening, and when the man who had refused old Addie a drink told his boss this, he said they were to give her anything she asked for, as when they did, they had good fortune, but when they didn't, nothing went right. So in future, they were to remember this, so that their work wouldn't be interrupted by magical means. Old Hewins went on to say he felt the badger had been possessed by the ghost of old Addie, still using her supernatural powers from beyond the grave. Beware the evil eye. Locals would say these following incidents happened due to local witches giving horses or their owners the evil eye, which is a supernatural belief in a malevolent curse. This curse was given by a glare by those wishing misfortune to others and their property. Witches were said to have been able to cause horses to become lame or unresponsive when working for their owners. There was talk of how witches would ride horses during the night, causing the horses to become exhausted and their manes and tails become tangled and in a mess. It was said by Stump's Cross Pike and halfway up Stanway Hill, areas close to Winchcombe, horses would become uneasy, and then they would be rooted to the spot and not move. It was reported that the same would happen on the Gretton Road by Margaret Stream in Winchcombe. A labourer called Fisher, who lived on Tithe Court, spoke about the long-ago practices of farmers and others who had to travel, that to avoid paying the price of the road toll twice, that they would send their workers to Tewkesbury not long after midnight. Fisher spoke of how one night he was riding his trusty steed, with others also on horseback, along the Gretton Road after midnight, when a glowing white apparition suddenly appeared at the side of the men and horses. The apparition then quickly moved to the front horse, which made the horse jump over it, causing the rider to fall off. All the riders saw this apparition, and whilst they were alarmed by the sight of it, it would appear the horses had seen it too, causing them all to come to a sudden stop, and unable to proceed any further. That's all for this episode, and I do hope you've enjoyed hearing about those magical folk of Winchcombe. The next episode, episode 30, will be out April. Till next time.